Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Paint Desk Ramblings. I'm joined tonight by two wonderful guests, and returning to the show, a dynamic duo actually, because I had both of them on for a single episode previously. So we have Whammewhamme from the forums, also known as Glenn, who's one of the main designers of the Infernal Dwarf book, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep, also the background team rep. So when that hits, I wrote a lot of it.
Yep. Neat.
The stories.
And we also have Dan Thomas on the show, who's part of the Ninth Age team again, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I've talked them into making a bespoke role for me because I'm a special snowflake.
Fair enough. I was gonna do some reference of you thought you were out and then they pulled you back in again, but I think you forced yourself back in again, it seems. Yeah, but that's.
I believe it was a negotiation, right, Dan? Oh, fine, but I have one condition.
I have twice my previous salary.
Technically true, I suppose.
Yeah. Excellent. So where was I? So we have you two wonderful guests back on the show. Last time we talked about the psychographic profiles, like in general, and how they apply to the Ninth Age. And tonight we're going to talk about them again, because it's such a fun topic, but specifically about the Infernal Dwarves and how it applies to that. So those are the Timmy, Johnny, Spike, and Melvin and Vortos player types that you can use to categorize different players that we'll be talking about. So that's going to be the main segment for tonight. But before that, we have the hobby spotlight. So what have you guys been working on lately? Let's start with Dan.
Yeah, so I have a big confession to make, which is that I bought a house and moved in, and I now have a hobby room, but everything is currently packed away. I don't think I've picked a paintbrush up since our last video.
Which is a shame, but understandable with all the commotion in the world, I guess, and buying a house and all of that.
So I'm a bad man, and I promise to rectify that in the new year.
Excellent. Then I guess I have to have you on again then to make sure that you have started painting again.
Yeah, my sort of excuse for having done some hobby is living vicariously through other people. So I do sort of bits of ad hoc coaching and try and help people with their game. And two of the people I've been doing that with have both won Universal Battle tournaments since we did the last video. So that's my that's my count as hobbying.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And really something to be proud of, I think. Spreading another part of the hobby and joy through that, so that's great. What about you, Glenn?
Well, I'm very burst-oriented in my painting, so this year, when even down here, there haven't been that many live events. I haven't done much painting, although I did get a few things done when in the one event that actually restarted up since off lockdown, which was nice. But luckily, like all of us, I have plenty of things just lying around that should be painted, so I grabbed literally the first things I found that regularly qualify as a to-do list. Are these guys visible? Yeah. It's like, all right, I need to paint something. No, put them down. It's just a raptor.
You need to hold them closer to your face. I think we can't see it. There we go. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Nice little raptor.
Yeah. Well, I've been meaning to do them for I don't want to think how long. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always good to dig into that back burner and try and sort some stuff out. So for myself, I'm also working on some mounts. I have some horses that I'm painting. So this one is from Fireforge. I have 5 lined up. So I have one from Games Workshop here. This one is from the Writer kit, or no, the Outriders kit for the Empire, and I'm gonna use them as the mounts for my Writers, which are made from models from all different sort of companies and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. I'm pouring in hours on these stupid little horses. They are a lot of fun to paint. My favorite color to paint is brown, and it's like brown and other brown and more brown, so I like that. And it's been fun looking up different horse types and try and replicate that on a tiny little space. So this
having
right here.
seen the standard, I was just going to say, having seen the standard of the rest of your Empire army, I look forward to seeing those finished.
Yeah, me too. I have a few of them finished already, but these are the I have 5 finished, but finishing up 5 more here now. So that's gonna be good to have finished. It's a nice unit to paint as well. Most units I've painted for, or no, all units I've painted for Empire so far has had like a banner, and that's like a really big project that takes a lot of time and thought, at least. But there's no banner on these guys, so it's just plow through, which is nice. So that's my hobby. Let's move on to the news. So the first bit of news we have is that the cultists got an update. Don't know if have you seen that? Do you use the cultists in your tournaments, or I guess in your lack of tournaments at the moment?
I don't have the brain power to keep up to date on all the supplements.
Yeah. So I'll just do a quick little rundown of what happened. Mostly as clarifications. The Profane Idol saw some changes. It got 50 points cheaper, which is nice. I don't think it was taken that much previously, so a big point drop. And then the Ritual Altar was changed massively, so it's now it can summon better than other stuff. So it can for every whale token it can summon for 300 points instead of just 200, and you can upgrade it to get a bigger base and get access to Wrath of the God, Wrath of God spell. So
That's cool.
Introduce that back into the game, which is neat. I know a lot of people, or a lot of the few people who do play cultists have missed it. So I think that was a good change. We'll move on to Dread Elves, which I'm sure you have noticed have been updated, as have everyone else. They made a really big reveal show about it, or yeah, with different podcasts helping in and picking up different pieces of it. So let's go through the book and pick out mention some things that we like about it that we noticed. Yeah, let's start with Glenn.
Sorry, what?
So I think there's generally some really cool stuff in this. I think there's some kind of interesting sub themes and stuff that they've brought out really nicely. Every time I've tried to write a list, though, I end up writing basically a cavalry list. There's something about this book; it's just screaming cavalry to me, which is really weird because they put so much effort into the infantry. I don't know whether it's the new Dread Knight design and the new what are they? The acolytes are they called?
The warlock acolytes.
Yeah, I think between those two units, I just struggle to see past them and add in some characters and core cavalry with crossbows, and I just I'm gonna have to put that on the table at some point.
I mean, the acolytes look so interesting with their spell casting and their innate synergy with their spell casting. So that's gonna be interesting to see how they do.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, I really like the design of these the blades of Dorag, which they also have.
That seriously would have been the next thing I pointed out, because I thought that was really clever design.
Yeah.
I still don't know how good it is, because I haven't actually had a chance to see them in action, but it just seems so cool. Which
it actually reminds me of an old design that was in the Ninth Age, which was the cadaver wagon back in like the very early days of the Ninth Age, where it activated a bubble that buffed your units around it, but only after a spell had been cast on it. So I'm hoping to see more of that design, because I think it creates some interesting choices in the game, where you like have to cast spells maybe where it's not super ideal to get those other effects going as well. So it's a nice trade-off, I think.
Yeah.
On these units, I guess it's just they get super powered when they are targeted by spells. So
to be fair, I did prepare a backup thing I really liked.
Yeah.
Which is, I really like the herd. Or whatever.
Yeah, the Thunder.
I'm sorry. I was part of. I saw them with the playtest names, and now I can't remember which one. Is which.
The Thunder Herd, I think they're called.
Okay, good. Thunder Herd. Yeah. Hopefully that's right. Just because what I really loved about it is the 60 by 40 base is just, it's a 40 millimeter. It screams to me, it's a 40 millimeter little monster with two little guys behind it.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't thought about that, but that's what it is.
It's darling, and you can even use them as wound markers.
Yeah.
One wound, dead.
Yeah, that's neat.
I really like that. Yeah,
that's a.
They also look pretty good to me, but maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong, Dan? Am I wrong?
I mean, they've got light troops. Anything with light troops, if you put it in the right list, is going to be good, right?
Oh, good. I was right about that.
Yeah, I also really like the raiding party with the beast monster upgrade, or beast breaker, which I think synergizes a bit with the Thunder Herd. You can give them hatred with it. So again, it's a lot of synergies in the army, I think, and that's always fun.
And what I like as well is the Beastbreaker getting can't be stomped. Like when I first saw that, I'm like, I love that. It's so I know, I just found it very sort of thematic, and it just seemed perfect for what what it represented. I thought that was a home run. It was really good.
I didn't notice that, but that's really clever. Like, of course, they are beast breakers. They're not gonna get stomped. They know how to handle beasts. So yeah, that's.
And I think the Beastmaster, the character, has the same rule as well, I think. Let me just check.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I noticed that on
that
one.
Yeah, he has the same rule. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of little touches like that pull a lot of things together in the book. I think, yeah, there's lots to be proud of, I think, in this, for Ninth Age.
Indeed. So I think we are pretty happy with the release then. Does any of you play?
If I may add if I can add just a not exactly a criticism, but a sort of side comment. Obviously, there are some things that get discussed a lot, right? Power gets discussed a lot on the forum. Everything has to be, completely overpowered or completely rubbish, and complexity gets discussed a lot. I'm really fascinated to see how the responses to the Dread Elf book change over time, because I think there's a lot of power and actually a lot of complexity in the book, but I think it's emergent complexity and emergent power. So I'm really interested to see how the initial reactions change over the next few months, and if they change and how they change.
I can see what you mean about the emergent power. I think like it's gonna, when people start to learn how to use it, it's gonna get more powerful. That sounds reasonable. But could you expand on the emergent complexity as well?
Do I understand what I'm saying well enough to expand on it?
Culture
I
bluff.
think it's about a lot of how the different buffs work and interact, right? You read each one, and each one is easy to understand. But
Yeah.
I think when you're the opponent on the other side of the table trying to track things during a game, I think that's going to be quite a different kettle of fish. And it, like I say, this is not a criticism, right? I'm intrigued to see if that aspect comes out in the feedback more later on. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm completely off the mark and everything will be really obvious to the opponents. But I think it's one of these things that is kind of these subtleties that, you know, you have in your face things and you have kind of subtler things that emerge later on. I am really interested to see how this one goes, because I think it's possible that there will be aspects of this that are quite complex to remember on the table or to apply on the table, even though to read it's quite straightforward.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good take. I'm a bit curious about the hereditary spell, the Curse of Morak, was it? Something like that, the Curse of something. That looks really interesting to me, but I can't really tell if it's gonna be good or not. Do you have any guesses?
I mean, to some extent, I think that's the team's view as well, right? I mean, reading between the lines, that's the impression I get, right? This is, you know, they had this idea and they're not sure if it's too much, so let's put it out into the public alpha and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the right approach. And from what I've seen, they seem to have, you know, added the caveat that maybe this is too much, maybe it's not, but, you know, be aware that we're keeping an eye on it. And I think that's absolutely the right approach, because there are some things that no amount of internal playtesting are going to tell you, right? You need to canvas a lot of people at a lot of different skill levels, and I think this I would put very much in that category. So I'm kind of with you. I'm on the fence. I think if anything, I'd shove the casting cost maybe up one if I was going to personally quick fix it, just because so it's not quite so easy a 3 dice for, you know. But no, I agree with you in that I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it actually pans out ultimately. And again, as people get used to using it and figure out the uses for it.
Yeah, that one I can really see that aspect in, like how you can take advantage of that spell. It's going to be interesting to see, for sure. All right. Any last thoughts on the Dreadels before we move on? No. Then we'll go into some other news from the Ninth Age. They are looking for both writers for the background team, and they are looking for editors or an editor for the Ninth Scroll. So if anyone listening is up for that task, go to the forums or check out the links down in the description, and you can apply. Any help is appreciated, I guess.
Background team's a sweet gig. Trust me, you want in.
Yeah, I have insight into the background team, and it seems like a really nice place to be, actually. Probably like the most soft or camaraderie place in the hobby, perhaps. So nice place to be. Next we have some new miniatures, and now I'm gonna try and do the screen sharing thing, and this might completely backfire. But we'll do. No, okay, that just won't work. And this is just got worse than I thought. I have to. There we go. Now you should be able to see my screen, and hopefully the audience can see it as well. So first up, we have some Thunderherd from Lubart Miniatures. They have put up pre-orders of these beautiful little models, and
awesome.
Yeah, just as you said, Glenn, they have this beast and 2 handlers standing behind them. But the beast is like pretty large, so the tail and head is sticking out still. But yeah, these are look really cool, I think. So if you're a Dread Elf player and thought this unit looked awesome on the table and want to paint one up ready for when the quarantines lift, then check out the pre-order of these on Lubart. These are 3D renders you see on the screen, but they sell miniatures in resin, that normal miniatures, not the new high-tech printable stuff that everyone seems to be doing. So that's neat. Check those out.
If I start a Dread Elf army, they're my unit fillers in every unit. They are so cool.
I think they have a little bit other for Red Elves. I'm not entirely sure.
But Dan, I thought your draft army was going to be all cavalry.
And that's almost cavalry. Oh, they have a Medusa, or a what's that called, a Gorgon nowadays, but that's everything. So
stop ruining my plans with your reason and logic.
I'll try, but no promises.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to use those as fillers in a cavalry unit if they're on a 60 by 40 base.
Fine, it'll be my next Demigriff army, my next Knights of the Sun Griffin army.
Ooh, that sounds neat. Okay, so moving on, we have Woodaxe, who have shown some new miniatures that are on the way. So this is a dwarf monoplane. They have a lot of flying contraptions for dwarfs. Woodaxe, which is
Nice.
I really like their stuff.
I kind of want one now.
If I ever start a dwarf army, which I never will, but if I did, I would be looking into a lot of their stuff. Well, no, I shouldn't say never, because depending on what their supplements books will be, it might happen. I'm not that interested in the normal dwarves, but some supplements could be cool. So, but that's probably way off in the future. Yeah. And I have lots of other projects, so no need to hurry. They also released some. They don't have a proper website, I think, so I'm using their thread from the forums. So they also released an upgrade pack for their Goblin King to make it fantasy themed. So these are the additional parts, and I think if we go to the next page, we can see a picture of the model that it's used for. No, we can't. Yeah, so it's a goblin standing on some shields carried by more goblins. Let's see. No, not those either. Whatever. I couldn't get a picture of those, but they have made it. It was 40k themed previously, but they made an upgrade pack so you can make it fantasy themed now.
Nice.
Yep. And lastly, we have Citizen of the Old World by Heresy Lab. So these are available both as STL files and as resin casts. They are the result of a Kickstarter they ran a while ago. So they have a lot of neat miniatures for Empire of Stone and Kingdom of Aquitaine, I think, is what I would use them as. So I've been really looking at like this guy, an ogre. I like ogres in my empire. But they have a lot of neat stuff. And as I said, available both as STL files and as resin casts. So yeah, that's all of the miniature news. Let's see if I can go out of screen sharing and back to here. Hopefully that showed up on the screen as well. All right, just have one more bit of news. I want to mention the Hammer Time podcast. They did a really nice episode about the fluff of the Dread Elves. So if you're into the Dread Elves and want to know a bit more about their fluff, then go check out that episode. The link will be down below. And the host of that show, Henry P. Miller, is part of the background team, so he does have some know-how about it. But I think they stick to the officially released stuff only.
I would hope so. We're really not supposed to do otherwise.
I didn't notice anything that seemed out of place, so I think he reined it in.
Henry wouldn't do that.
Nah, he's a good.
Just saying, don't try and make me slip up.
Make no promises. Okay, so
Right.
that's all for the news. Unless you have anything you want to bring up. Nope. Okay. Yeah.
Keep an eye out for future things coming.
Yep.
And Merry Christmas.
Sounds intriguing. I should also mention that just earlier today, or maybe yesterday I think it was, they released another update for the Infernal Dwarves. So we will be looking at that in the main segment in a while, but we haven't had that much time to digest it, I guess. So we'll see how deep into detail we go about those parts.
Yes. Speak for yourself, I think.
All right.
I helped write it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've been thinking about it for weeks.
Fair enough.
He doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Finally got it out the door.
Now you're so bored with it, so all right. But let's move on to the main segment then, shall we? So we'll start with a quick rundown of the psychographic profiles. So these were developed by Wizards of the Coast for Magic the Gathering, and used to like identify different types of player and what they enjoy, so that you can design games and mechanics for different people, so that everybody can get some enjoyment out of it. So first up we have Timmy, who's like the player who wants to experience something. He wants cool, flashy stuff, explosions going off, and big monsters plowing through the field. All of that happy stuff. I should also mention we did an episode on this before, so if you want a deep dive into the basics of these profiles, you can check out that episode. It will be linked down below. So that's Timmy. He's like really happy to be playing, and he doesn't really care about winning as long as he gets to have his fun.
It's probably worth noting that not all Timmys are the happy-go-lucky type. It does technically also include people who are there who enjoy making other people miserable.
Yes,
not necessarily good Timmy to make happy, but technically that is the category.
Yes, the griefer Timmy, whose definition of happiness is ruining other people's fun, which is not ideal, but if it works for you. An example of this is the milling decks in Magic the Gathering, where your play is making sure that the opponent doesn't get to play the game. So I think I would categorize the gunline list as a griefer type of Timmy play. You get to shoot your big weapons, but if it works, then the opponent doesn't get to go and smash your face in, which is what I want to do. So that's Timmy.
Yep.
Moving on to Johnny, who is the creative player who wants to express himself while playing. He wants to win, but he wants to do it on his own terms. So this includes the combo player who builds the craziest lists, trying to take new and exciting stuff and make it work in different and exciting ways. I think is how I would.
That does also include people who are just there to like make the perfectly, amazingly themed army that has this very clever thing about how it's all put together. And oh, wait, is that exactly? Yes, it is.
Yeah, and it also includes in the hobby aspect of the game. So you can be very creative in this hobby by painting your miniatures and building your army in a specific way. So that satisfies the Johnny players as well. And then finally there's Spike, who wants to win. That's his main motivator, and often uses net lists. He doesn't take any enjoyment out of creating the list. He finds the best list online and uses it to perfection. Also includes
Although some of them do make their own because they're just that good and like.
Yeah, of course. And some
you
of
can't make a list good enough for me. I have to make it for me because only I can do it that well. We know those guys.
We do. Also includes the nuts and bolt player who focuses on their own skill instead of the list. So they try different lists and make sure that they are as good as possible at the game, which I think is how we categorized Dan last time. Should also be mentioned that no one is 100% either of these. These are stereotypes, so most people are a combination. I'm a Timmy and Johnny player, mostly myself.
So I had an epiphany after our last video. I did some more reading before this one just to try and refresh myself.
Yeah.
And I came across a quote by, I think it was Mark Rosewater actually, who he was the guy that came up with these, right?
Yeah.
And he had a sentence that described someone who was all three pretty equally.
All right.
And it's the first time I've identified properly with anything I've read about these profiles, right? And because it was something like, I need to win my way whilst having fun, right? So win my way whilst having fun. And I kind of had this kind of light bulb moment of, because I'm really funny with games. Games fascinate me, but not many of them hold my attention. And I think that sentence has finally allowed me to understand why, because I need a game that allows me to win, that allows me to win my way, and that I enjoy the experience whilst doing it. And I think that's why so few games over my life have really grabbed me for any substantial length of time.
All right. Cool. Yeah, that's a great summary of all three of them. For sure. We should also mention the two aesthetic profiles. So these are similar, but they explain a little bit different I think these are.
They're not about how you play.
They are,
but they're still about how you interact with the hobby.
Yeah, they are about how you have fun instead of why you have fun, I think is the question that is raised. I'm still trying to grasp exactly what that means, but these are neat too. So it's Melvin, who likes the mechanics of the game, taking enjoyment out of that, and there's Warthos, who takes enjoyment out of the fluff and the story behind the game.
If you want a really Melvin moment, remember how I was so happy about the 60mm base model means you can have a 40mm base model with two little 20mm base models?
Yeah.
That's Melvin happiness.
Yeah.
Melvin goes, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And other people go, you're weird. And I can't argue, but nonetheless.
Unless they're also Melvin, which I am, so my reaction was, oh, that's neat. I haven't thought about that. So that's for sure a Melvin move. Okay. So with that out of the way, do we want to dive right into it? I think.
Can I ask a silly question that occurred to me maybe before we dive in? We don't need to spend much time on it. I had this interesting thought that our games designers also kind of under these profiles, right? And the thing that made me think about this is one of the subtypes for Spike is a tuner, right? Where he basically takes the innovations that other people have made and makes those final adjustments to get that maximum efficiency out of them. And it made me laugh because this is how I describe myself as a games designer. I'm not a naturally creative person, right? I'm not the person that reads the fluff and suddenly writes down this perfectly evocative design. I can't do that. But what I'm quite good at is tweaking someone else's design. So I just wondered, do we think these profiles kind of also apply to how designers work?
I mean, in a way,
I mean, it's kind of says something about who you are as a person, so it certainly spills over. It's hard to be a game designer without fitting into some kind of play thing, because if you don't play games, you can't really design them.
yeah.
Probably. I'm sure there's some weird savant out there who designs games, never plays them. They're still good. It's weird, but apart from that one guy,
And I
Yeah.
think it can be really important to actually have maybe to think about these type of things when picking a team.
Game design is a game.
Yeah, you can see it as that as well.
Like it's a challenge. There's kind of ways to win and lose ish. Yeah.
So
Everything.
do you think games designers would disproportionately come from one of these categories?
My understanding is that they tend to fall into either Johnny or Spike, depending on how they got there.
I would guess so too.
Like a lot of games companies will recruit from top competitive players because they need their expertise. Guess what? You're going to get a whole bunch of when you do that. Whereas creative types tend to be Johnnies. You do get Timmys, but they are rarer.
Yeah, I think the project has a lot of Timmys in it, but I don't think they're that much part of the game design teams. And maybe that's something that the project needs to take into account and try and engage Timmy in that way. But at the same time, that's not necessarily what Timmy finds fun to design games.
So one last question then on this, just because I found it fascinating, is are all games designers necessarily Mel? Do they have to have that interest in kind of the mechanics and so on?
No,
I don't think so.
Would be the simplest answer. You can be a great contributing thing while being jammed up hard against the vortex end of the spectrum. You'll provide different insights into the game, but speaking as a member of the background team, no, you don't have to be very contributing. Like some of my fellows are just almost allergic to working with rules, but you want them on the team because they're creative powerhouses. Just don't ask them to write rules.
Yeah, use them as bounce ideas off to see if the rules that you create vibe with them to evoke the background in the right way and stuff like that. Okay,
cool. Well, thanks for indulging me on that. I found that really fascinating to think about, so thanks.
Yeah. Really good questions. Okay, so now we'll move on to different parts of the Infernal Dwarf books, and I think I want to start off with and this one I'm a bit unsure exactly what's happening here, but it's when I started to see the early versions of this book, because I do have some access to that. There was one part of the design that really grabbed me, and that was the modular design of the war machines. So you have these different weapons that you can mount on different chassis, and you can equip them with different types of ammunition. So you have the weapon team, the Infernal Artillery, and the Infernal Engine. All of them could take the same of 3 different weapons that were modified a little bit depending on what they were put on, and then you could take ammunitions in addition to that. It's been toned down a little bit in the latest releases, so the ammunition is limited to the 2 bigger ones, and they all have the same strength now, the lower value. But the ammunitions, I guess, compensate for that, so making the bigger guns more powerful. So I'm a bit curious about.
Talk about that one, especially in the context of this, because this is the one place in the entire design that can actually point directly to a Mark Rosewater quote as kind of an inspiration here.
All right.
Which was part of his design brief for the set Kaladesh was make the players feel like an inventor. And I thought that was a really neat phrase.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up using it while championing this modular design.
Yeah.
Let the player feel like, that they're the guy who's going like, all right, let's put this bit together and that bit together and that, and all right, this is my device.
Yeah.
I also know that the original version was even crazier. There were 4 levels of customization.
Ooh. Yeah.
I got talked out of that one. I'm not going to say it wasn't a good idea to talk me out of it. I just want to point out, when I first thought of it, there was a 4th toggle.
Yeah.
So
right.
twice as, so literally, it was just a two-part toggle. I think it was something like rocket or shell.
Yeah.
I got talked out of rocket or shell. It was a bit too much. Again, they were right to do so. I sometimes get a little carried away. But yeah, I wanted to share that because
that's cool. So I think the reason I like this design is like because I'm an engineer as trade, and it just spoke to my engineering side of this really industrialized nation, having these different modules that you put together and bring into war. But I can't really put my finger about it. Which player types this appeals to? Is it a Melvin thing?
Well, I'd say that the customization thing is a Johnny targeted thing conceptually.
Yeah, the combo player.
And the option to express yourself and mold the game to be what you want it to be.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is, and this is where Kaladesh comes into it, because that was in fact a set that was very Johnny oriented. They then obviously made sure that everyone else did get left out, but the core premise was leading that way. So 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 to me it's pretty clear, because I know where it came from, I know where the idea came from, and I know what the inspiration was.
I think it also appeals to the Warthos a bit with this industrial nature of it. It connects. It really connects the rules to the fluff, and in a nice way, I think.
Oh sure, but like that kind of design, the mechanical design doesn't do that, but because it's connected to the right creative.
Yeah.
Because you can do something like this with any book, but when it fits together with the theme, that's when you're onto something that hits multiple psychographics.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sure.
It's moderately spiky because they can pick the exact right one for their list and get a little bit extra percentage that way. Not super Timmy though. In fact, it's kind of disappointing to Timmy because but they look and they go, or instead of all this that's giving me a headache to read, I could have had one really big war machine. This book sucks. Where's my really big war machine?
Yeah.
Which
I think that's the most common complaint against it, the complexity of it, and maybe that's coming from Timmy players mostly, or the Timmy side of those players. So that's fair. Yeah.
Again, it's a perfectly reasonable complaint. If something's not aimed at you, you're like, that's not. I don't like this.
Yeah.
And that's fair. We sort of try and make sure that everyone likes everything, because you are our wonderful players, and we want you to keep being our wonderful players.
Yeah. At the same time, game design, you don't want to create something that everybody's okay with. You want to create something that some people love and other people maybe even hate.
Yes, it is better for something to be both beloved and be hated he meant the word hated. I
Yeah.
like it. Then mediocre. Because if you hate it, then don't play it.
Yeah. but
There we go.
but you might have to play against
You-
it. So
Your problem solved mostly. Well, sure. Which is why you need to kind of avoid things that are miserable to play against. But it's a little more okay to play things that aren't fun for everyone to play with, I think.
Yeah.
As long as you make sure they're the right things.
Yes.
Like ideally, like things that they wouldn't want creatively should also be the things that they don't want mechanically. Yeah. It's tricky. I'm not saying we did perfectly. I know enough theory, but applying it, that's fun. And when I say fun, I mean hard. And when I say hard, I mean really hard.
For sure. Okay, moving on. Do you have a pick, Dan, for a unit that you want to bring up to this?
So I had a question actually, because I couldn't decide what I thought the answer was. So there's the Overlord has this Keys to the Citadel ability.
Yeah.
So who is that appealing to? Who is that aimed at? Because I sort of chased my tail in circles when I tried to answer this. So I'm really intrigued to hear what you two think.
I think Johnny, because you can do the combos at the table, but it's still combo focused.
I'd have argued that it was Spike because the ability to adapt to what they're doing and is a very nuts and bolts kind of thing where knowing the right time to not go with that thing and instead go with that other thing and to sit down and crunch and analyze. So should I go with the rerolls to wound one or the extra thing or the extra strength one, and which one of these is better, and all these technical details that can add up to that they probably add up to, like, maybe a 1% difference in your chances of winning for the hours of thought you put into this.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
it's not really a creative expression. That's which is the only side. It's more about just winning the game. So that's true. It still can appeal to the combo player, I think, in Johnny, trying to figure out the best combo in every situation. But certainly a big lot of a lot of spike in there.
So I also wondered, and this might be me slightly, misinterpreting the profiles, but I wondered if there was a bit of Timmy in the sense of if you pick the right one and you get it in the right situation, the impact could be really big. Is that enough of a Timmy thing?
That's Timmy, but here's the thing: a Timmy doesn't worry about the fact that they might be playing against the right enemy this time. They're happy to take that cool weapon that makes people explode just outright. They'll gem into their list and be like, yeah, this is going to make people explode, and they'll play against 3 armies that does nothing against. And it's like, huh. And then this one guy has it, and he's like, woohoo!
It might be though that it doesn't appeal to Timmy, but it could actually help Timmy. So if you, it could help Timmy get those moments where it clicks.
Oh yeah, it can be good for him without necessarily being the thing that makes him feel like this is his design.
Yeah,
that's definitely a good point.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thanks. I'm glad that the answer wasn't straightforward. I thought about it for 20 minutes without reaching an answer.
No, I think it's. I really like that design when I first saw it. Like,
I'm sorry, you asked 2 people and got 2 different answers. I think it says it all, really.
Yeah, but I think it's a great design.
I'm sure there'd been 3.
Shall we move on to another controversial rule on the same profile? Talking about, of course, about the arrogance of the Overlord. I'm not sure where this falls. I think it could be a Timmy thing to like mess with the opponent, which is a bit of a griefer moment where you take agency from the opponent by forcing them to charge you. but I'm not entirely sure.
I think that's fair.
I think there's quite a few different ones in this one, but I think they would all use it differently. Like what I've got in my head is that, you know, there's a Johnny aspect to it, which is building the list that showcases it.
Yeah.
Right. It's an ability that, you know, could really drive a list. And in my head, that would be a Johnny thing, to really build the list that showcases it and uses it. You know,
True.
There's obviously the spike thing, but I think also, at least in my head, both Mel and Vorthos come into this as well, because, you know, it is a rule that, you know, reflects the background and how, you know, overlords are seen in the world, but also just from a Mel point of view, the sort of how it fits together and what is going on in this design. I thought maybe.
I talked the last show I did. I talked with I would categorize him as a Timmy player and a probably a Vorthos player, and he didn't like it. He had trouble with the fluff aspect of it, of the Infernal Dwarves being like more hated than anything else.
That is actually the case, though. Like,
yeah, they are like super antagonists in the setting, but still getting like everybody to hate you, even like people you never met. Yeah, it didn't click with him, but that could be because the background is not that available at the moment.
And it wasn't necessarily something I sold that hard, because it's from, obviously the Infernal Dwarves book is, even once you get to it, it's from the perspective of people who are interacting with the Infernal Dwarves, so they're kind of in the subset of people who are less inclined to just run screaming at them with an axe on sight.
Yeah.
Because those people don't create the most interesting story remnants.
Yeah. That's fair.
But yeah, like, there is seriously a thing where, like, no, really, it would be reasonable for a lot of factions to go, so there's an army of demons ravaging the land. On the other hand, they seem to be about to attack those Infernal Dwarves. Maybe we should ask them if they want help.
Yeah.
Like, they are really, they are supposed to be really deeply unpopular. It's not quite literally there, but like, a lot of people, like, they're like, one of the things driving people towards the Dark Gods is, in fact, the fact that they're the next country over from the Infernal Dwarves, and screw those guys. Hey, can you help me take them down? Some soul, you say? Well, it's a harsh price. Oh, wait, if I do well, I get to become like immortal and stuff. I'm in.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's certainly been a controversial
We
design.
did try to fix some. We did try and work on the fluff a bit with the revision we just did.
Yeah, and I was getting to that really. It's the change to make it only affect enemy characters and champions. I think is a great one, because I think that makes more sense to me, that the characters and the champions, they are the ones who like understand and really hate the enemy general, the Infernal Dwarf general, while like units, especially like dogs and stuff, don't know what they're fighting. So
yeah. I mean, I didn't think about this the first one we were working on it, because, to type back magic design, why can a bird use a sword?
Why can't bird use a sword?
Why can a bird use a sword? Because in magic, you can have swords which you can give to your guys, and they can hit people with the magic sword.
Yeah.
And you can give this to your guy, which happens to just be like a bird, a perfectly ordinary mundane bird.
Yeah. Is
now hitting people with a sword. How is it hitting people with a sword? The answer is, don't think about it. It's just damn mechanics, which is not always a satisfying answer. And when people point this out, it's like, oh yeah, we should probably do something about that, and we did. And that might mean you need to adjust the power up in places, but I think it's still pretty interesting as it is. it's more focused on what it's supposed to do, which is, force decisive engagements. Like, the idea wasn't to just screw over people's ability to make tactical plans, but just say, no, really, we're going to have an actual battle here.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I mean, I think I like the rule, but I think it's one of those rules that's going to be very difficult to judge without playing with it a lot. So
yeah, I'm hoping it works out, but if it doesn't,
yeah.
it doesn't.
So much like the Dread Elf spell, we'll see how this goes. Basically, it's a trial, so that's neat. Okay, moving on. Do you have a pick, Glenn?
Thing to discuss with a psychographic profile in mind. God.
Yeah, I can throw something out if you prefer.
Please help me. My ability to think and hold a brush is apparently limited.
So, if I may,
yeah.
I was trying to ask myself what if I had to try and pick something that was Timmy, because I think that can sometimes be harder to do in 9th Age.
Yeah.
And I wondered if the tablet, the magic item, the tablet counted as a Timmy thing. It felt, I think there's a spike element in it as well, but is that a little bit go big or go home?
You have to remind me what the tablet was. Is that?
It's the one that rewards you for using 3 or more dice on spells.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually looked at that and thought maybe this is a Timmy thing. So maybe you're onto something.
No, I think you're right. That's a good call. Yeah, like the idea was go big or go home.
Yeah.
I was trying to capture if yes, this was my design. Although my design was of course more broken. Thanks to the team for fixing it.
But yeah,
sorry. Yeah, it's designed to capture the feeling of just reckless use of power. Put you in the mindset of the guys who blew up half a continent, including most of their own empire, and don't consider that to have been a mistake so much as something to learn from and exploit the unexpected side effects.
So
and do it again. They'll do it again after changing the parameters to try and prevent it from having the exact same occurrence. But
yeah, there's kind of the speech bubble, right? Like, does it do that every time?
Yeah, that sounds like the Infernal Dwarves. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
another faction would destroy the notes of the man who blew up a continent. They copy them and treasure them.
Yeah, I think that's a good design, and it does speak to Timmy. Yeah. I'm curious about the Infernal Engine. It's in my opinion, it's the coolest unit in the book at the moment. I really like that. And I think like the rules like the furnace breach on when you get a misfire, it can like start burning and you can't shoot anymore, but instead you have like a burning flame on the front of your engine that you just ram into people. That is such an evocative rule for me. So I think that's a lot of Melvin and Vortos in there.
I think the beauty of it is that it came about because we're trying to solve some mechanical problems.
Yeah.
Mechanical problem number 1. If you roll 1 on the misfire chat with your flamethrower, the model dies.
Yeah.
This thing costs 500 points.
Wouldn't have been ideal, no.
People on the team are just like, I don't think we want that to happen routinely. I think people might get upset when they fire it on turn 1 and it explodes and dies.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Right. So we were looking for something to not have that happen.
Yeah.
But we also had a second problem, which is it's supposed to be sort of part of the Kadim family, because it's not just a ordinary steam engine. It's not Infernal Dwarves don't just do Empire Sunstyle style mundane engineering. They're like, I suppose you could just do this with pure coal and fire and stuff, but why would you when you can stick a fire elemental in the boiler room?
Yeah, that's more efficient.
It's not like they're that expensive compared to building the engine anyway. So let's stick a fire elemental in the boiler room. But how on earth do you represent that there's a fire elemental in the boiler room? They're in the boiler room. It's in the middle of the thing. It's not coming out.
Yeah.
What if they come out with misfires?
Yeah. Yeah, that's neat. It doesn't appear though if you don't use a shooting weapon on it. If you do the rock crushers, it's trapped forever.
The rock crusher is strictly designed. It could come out. It's just that how do you misfire? It's just driving around.
Yeah.
It's still got the roll. If it manages to misfire just by not having a shooting weapon, then bam, it's out.
Maybe in the future we can get some supplement that can give it a shooting weapon even with the rock crusher, and then it can misfire. I actually had a little Johnny thought about this one, and that is the creative pursuit of and again I think this is a Johnny Timmy move, where you get the fire breach, and so you do something to your miniature to represent this. Like you switch a weapon out or magnetize some flames or something like bursting out of it, and then you just cackle madly as you ram it into people and put them on fire. So I think that's the creative thing in modifying your model is like a Johnny move, which I can see happening, and
100%.
and using that can be very, very Timmy, I think. So I think that's a successful design. Want to talk about the big thing in the book, the flame theme with the incendiary markers and all the fire and all of that. Who does this appeal to?
That's a good question. I hadn't actually specifically thought that one that way, because it just started as such a ninth age thing to focus on. Like, we knew that our community wanted, and we didn't actually focus on the team as a whole doesn't really analyze psychographically. So
yeah,
I hadn't thought of that.
I think it's.
If I had to guess, sorry, you have more thoughts.
I think it's a lot of Johnny with the combos that you can create, and you can build a whole army that's focused on putting out all these markers and then setting people on fire. But I also think that's a very Timmy move because it's so evocative. Just spreading out the markers.
And you can set up a big moment too.
Yeah. And I wanted to associate this with a meme as well, because some men just want to watch the world burn, and that's this rule. Which I think is again I think it's a lot of Timmy here.
So the actual kind of manifestation, of course, on the table is there are counters and so on, right? Does that play into the aesthetic profiles? Because you're kind of, I guess it's sort of a Timmy thing. What I'm saying really, in that it's part of the experience. But I just wonder if it feels to me like a rule that is it is more than just the actual effects it has in the game, right? It's a physical representation on the tabletop of things that are going on and units being set on fire and things like this.
I guess that would be Warthos. Like mechanically, it's not super interesting. It's fairly simple. You put up markers and remove them when you do flaming attacks on them. So I think it's aesthetically it's a Warthos design. I'm not entirely sure about that, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm right, but counterpoint.
Yeah.
I feel like kind of the whole way that flaming and flammable works in Ninth Age, and where there's this whole thing where you can where we've actually set up so you can make things flammable rather than just, oh good, it's flammable, my fire is what I bear against, but I will go out and find ways to make things flammable. Kind of plays into Meldon space where it's like, well, why else would you have these rules if you don't intend to give it out? And then the flavor almost came second. I mean, we've got things where it actually fits, but I feel like the impulse to have the ability to give things flammable came from a Meldon place where people are like, this is a rule, why is it not happening more often? Hey, maybe we should let people build around it rather than, just make random units which randomly die against random fire attacks. Which, and that's a good design. Like, it's a lot more fun to be able to make something flammable and then set on fire than to just be like, oh, playing against Sylvan Elves today, yes, I win.
Yeah, that's true.
Sucks to be them.
Yeah, it's that lets you take control over it in a different way. Yeah. Okay. Yes. We talked about what Timmy likes in this book. So should we take that approach and ask what does I mean, a lot of things we mentioned we think Johnny likes. So more specifically, what does Spike like in this book?
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it sort of links to Johnny, but there's the being able to set the vassals up with the battle focus and potentially generating reroll flaming themselves and having a flaming banner, right? This is very potent on what on some level is goblins, it's very potent, and equally the Infernal Warriors with the great weapons and the fight in extra rank. All the people, a lot of the tournament players I know, they don't necessarily stick with that core, but it's normally the first core they write, right? It's, I can take this obvious unit that's well priced and has this clear role in the game and does this thing and does it well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that Spike players, do they like armies that are tricky to play, to master?
Generally, because especially ones on the something to prove end of the spectrum, they'd rather have an army that they can win with and other people can't, because that shows that they're better than those people who can't win with it.
Yeah, that sounds more like a Johnny trait.
That's not every Spike. That is,
yeah.
But there's a subset.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like generally if it's difficult to master, it's probably difficult to counter as well. So like a nuts and bolt Spike is gonna find and refine his skill with the army and be very successful with it, is my thinking.
Very good. I'm not saying that the army is like that. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
How hard the army is to master or counter. At least not for sure.
I think from a design perspective, it's a bit hard to tell right now, just because the beta process and changing points, particularly. I think it's quite hard to tell if the design of the army is like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. It's a bit early.
I mean, I think the big stuff is the other place I would point at Spike, right? Double Infernal Engines is very, very Spike, I would say, or just generally stacking up the big things, right? So a comboing Infernal Engines and the big stuff that the characters ride.
For the record, I would call that Timmy Spike, because liking the big things, it is taking Spike and leaning Timmy.
Yeah.
So it's not. I'm not saying it's not Spike, but it's worth identifying when you're one of those intersection points.
If the monsters are good, it can be Spike.
But if the monsters are bad, it's Timmy. If the monsters are good, it's Timmy Spike.
Yeah.
So I had a question about this actually when I was going to ask when you were talking about the Infernal Engine before.
Yeah.
It seems to me that what's good about the Infernal Engine mechanically is its tactical rolls more than it doesn't generally do massive amounts of stomping by itself, which is why I sort of, in my head, it was more Spike than Timmy. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Ooh.
Oh, right. The fact that it's one of the few big things that roams around on its own, but can't just crush an infantry unit underneath its boot heel.
Yeah.
You're right. That makes it one of the least Timmy monsters in the game, because the ability to just roll that d6, get a 6, and obliterate an entire unit that looked like it had him on the ropes. Yeah, that monsters are definitely normally more Timmy than he is.
Yeah, that's true.
Good. So no, good catch. You are, as ever, insightful.
I mean, to be fair, I've only got that on this thing because past two of them when I write a list, even now, I have to write a list where I start and go, I'm not going to take any Infernal Engines.
Yeah.
I mean, I used one in the old book, and it didn't matter what else I used in the army, whether it was the Titan, whether it was the Incarnates, and whether it's the Overlord, whether literally blunderbusses, it didn't matter what else I took in the list. If I took a tank, it was nearly always the thing my opponent moaned about, which might tell you more about how I play it than anything else.
Yeah, I was about this Timmy nonsense and Monster Mash. I before this I tried making a list, like just the very, very basics of it, going in with the Timmy approach, and immediately went for the monsters because Timmy likes monsters. So I tried to take one of each of the biggest monsters. So that's one Great Bull of Shamut, one Infernal Engine with the Steel Juggernaut upgrade, and the Rock Crushers, because that's you ram it into people. That's a Timmy move, and one Kadim Titan. And it came out 10 points too much for the section in a 4,500 point battle or army. And I was like thinking, is this intentional?
I can honestly say no. No, literally, it's not intentional. The system for it is each of those was individually priced to their price point.
Yeah.
They were calculated based on an average of a number of people's votes. And it coincidentally hit that number. I don't know how.
Yeah, I feel bad for Timmy though. but if you take the Titan mortar on the Infernal Engine, it fits. So I guess it's all right. or drop this Steel Juggernaut to upgrade.
That just priced at what seemed fair as a starting point. That is all there is to it. This is not balance team style. Let's work out what the list should look like and then adjust the points to fit the percentages. The points will end up where they end up. It is as far as I'm aware, the general philosophy behind it.
Yep.
Try and make it a good starting point, and see what people take.
Yeah. I will be hoping for some of that going down just a little bit in points to make it fit. That would be my wish. So we'll see about that. Okay.
So can I ask who you guys think the Titan kind of appeals to? I mean, obviously Timmy on some level, but just the reason I ask is because there was some feedback gathered recently by the ACSs for the army, and the Titan did quite well, right? It was one of the most liked elements, and I personally really like the design. But I'm intrigued as to, I mean, the obvious Timmy element, but how would you guys fit the Titan into these profiles?
I just want to comment on. I had gotten the impression that the Titan wasn't very much liked by the community, but that maybe was earlier.
It had some early initial backlash, if I recall correctly, but I think it's grown on people.
All right.
It turns out that no, it didn't need to be Strength 7. That was, in fact, overkill. glorious, murderous overkill that made things explode into giblets. But, strictly speaking, a little bit of overkill.
Yeah.
No, Dan's referring to literally the absolute most recent thing gathered in the past few weeks, from some surveys that went out on the forums.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was actually one of the more popular things in the book.
Okay, good to hear.
And I just want to point out that it's a big stompy monster that makes things go squish, and is fully capable of you flank charged me with a huge brick of things. I seem to have made enough armor saves to stay alive and then stomped to win combat. Did you just break it and I chased you down? I was expecting to die.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that's what mine did 2 games ago with ID. It's like, I remember that one because that was I really was expecting it to lose that fight, and I was okay with that because it was effectively okay. I can't let that unit hit my lines or I lose the game. The only thing I can throw in the way is the Titan. Farewell, old friend. and then it won, and I'm like, didn't expect that. Not complaining. Still surprised.
That's a good tactic. I have a friend who managed to win a game in not perhaps not a similar way, but it reminded me of it, where he was he did some bad placement and his big Death Star got charged in the flank by something that should have killed it, and then the dice just he passed a break test on discipline 3 or something. And then turn around, pass that test as well, and then just beat the charger to a pulp. So pure tactics.
Yep. This is why we roll dice.
Yeah, lured them into the trap.
You fool! You thought that statistics were on your side.
Complete tangent.
Anyway, but my point is, it wasn't aimed to make him a little bit build around, with his debuff effect.
Yeah.
Which isn't the strongest of themes, but it's I think it's just enough that you can kind of be like, yeah. This is the thing I lean on sometimes. Which
he reduces armor. Or is the armor of things in base contact, enemies in base contact. Yeah.
Which has really fun kind of mini theme synergy with the Kadim incarnates, right? Because they have relatively lower AP compared to their strength. So their grinds are strength 4 AP 0 and their attacks are strength 5 AP 1. So you put this guy in as well, who's their bigger brother, and oh wow, suddenly they're killing a lot more, which I think is a really fun kind of mini theme.
Yeah,
And entirely intentional. It was like, all right, he's the king of the Kadeems. He's like the greater demon equivalent of, for the Kadeem family. He should have something a little bit reminiscent of Dominion, of like Dominion of blah. Well, this is Dominion of Kadeem. Minus one AP if you're in base contact with me.
Yep.
So that's kind of what's going on there.
I think that appeals to Johnny primarily, like the combos in there.
But that's the point.
Yeah, and also the combos.
It's there on top of a Timmy big stompy thing on top of, something that is actually competitive.
Yeah.
So kind of actually managed to be acceptable to everybody there, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a clear flavor. And there's clear flavor and also something slightly clever going on mechanically. So, like, I think we did pretty well with that one.
So this is why I brought it up, because I think it's one of the best single designs that Ninth Age has put out. I think it's really elegant in the sense of what you get from it compared to the amount of text, if that makes sense. I think it's a really elegant design, and I've thought that since I first saw it. So yeah, it's nice that kind of actually works when you break it down to the psychographic profiles rather than just Dan's weird opinion.
It turns out that experts have intuitions that align with study. Can't imagine why. Maybe it's because they're experts.
Good to have verification for sure.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's a very, very fine design. I wonder though if the introduction of the Johnny aspects in it is what caused the knee-jerk reaction from the Timmys when it was first released. Like they wanted a big stompy monster, not a debuff wagon.
Yeah, it was a role change, right? And I think you're exactly right. I think that's why it got that sort of knee-jerk reaction. It was a role change.
Yeah, but as it turns out, it's still a big stompy monster, so it just has some other roles now as well.
There's also a spike aspect to this. Maybe this is just me personally, but one of the problems with the old Titan was it was a shed load of points.
Yeah.
and the wrong dice roll took it off. Like I genuinely had a game once against a regular opponent where we traded a couple of drops and then I dropped for first. And I dropped for first such that unless I rolled a 1 and he rolled a 6, I was getting first turn. And the Titan was set up because I thought he'd made a mistake in his deployment, and the Titan was set up to basically take advantage of that mistake. And I was like, right, I have got you. Guess what happened? I rolled a 1, he rolled a 6, and it was something stupid like 20 Empire crossbows and 20 militia. Took it off. And I was like, oh, come on, I haven't even had a turn. And I was going to win the game with that on basic turn 1. And this new design, I think, is less... This will be bad for some players and good for others, but I think it's less coin flippy like that, right? It has an extra health point and is fewer points, and so its survivability per point, I think, meaningfully changed to the point where it's no longer quite such a coin flip of they rolled well against it or they didn't. I like that. It makes me personally more likely to take it. I bet there's some Timmy players who are less likely to take it, right? There's a Timmy subset who's the adrenaline gamer who probably on some level likes that a little bit, that, will my monster get taken off or will I get away with it? I thought that was interesting as well.
I've actually had, with the old Titan, I've had 2 super Timmy moments that went opposite directions. So, the really interesting thing is that both these happen at a team tournament, which has a tag team tournament. So you have 4 players at each table, and it was at the same table. So the tournament has unique scenarios for every table. So this was the bridge scenario, where you have a gigantic bridge in the middle of the board, and your goal is to control it. And in one game, I was teamed up with a Sylvaneth player, and they ran a Titan down the down the bridge to try and just kill everything and then move in with the scoring units to control it. And we charged a Sylvan Lord that was like super killy, had all the tools, the Wild Rider Lord.
Reroll wounds, divine attacks.
Yeah, and I think he had multiple wounds some way as well. He was bonkers. And the Titan was the perfect target for him. We have managed to do 1 wound to Titan before, I think, or maybe even 2. So he was like primed for that charge. Charged in, they had 3 wounds. He passed all 3 Aegis saves and then got splattered. So all 3 5-up Aegis save passed. The other game we had a big fight with the opponents ran the Titan and a Forsaken one and an Exalted Herald up the bridge to try and clear it, and we countered with 2 wrecking teams and a shitload of chariots, making up the rear of that. So that was a big nasty combat, and the Titan and all of that came out victorious. But then some chariots snuck up on the below the bridge next to it and used some archers and blinked the two last wounds of the Titan with little short bows. So that was nice. But again, speaks to the swinginess of the design, which is, as you say, a bit reduced now. Which appeals to Spike, but maybe not to Timmy.
But like I said, it's still fully capable of wildly random swings.
Yeah,
so
it's reduced, but it's still there. So, which as we said, initially the Timmies were a bit upset with the design, but as it seems now, most have come around and quite like it. And
like we would have been, the team would have liked to have given them the biggest monster in the game, but it that was allotted to some other army, so we couldn't.
Yeah.
We're sorry. The allocations are in theory fair. I'm arguing they're not. I just, it's not my call.
Yep. That's how it is. Someone has to have the biggest monster. So, okay, moving on. I mean, we've touched upon a lot of the stuff. Maybe talk about the hereditary spell, which has changed quite a bit during the iterations.
It really has.
So should we start with the older variant with the volcano that erupted and like a mini Wrath of God?
Sure. So that one started life as volcanic eruption. That was that was where it started from. All right, what would be the most Infernal Dwarf spell to be a spell ever to spell? Volcano. And that's not a bad place to start, because it was super appropriate, like,
yeah.
In terms of theme and flavor and style and stuff. Masters of like not just fire but also like the earth. Boom. The mechanics were weird.
Yeah, it never quite clicked, I think.
Like it needed to be like some kind of indiscriminate exploity thing, right? Because it's a volcano. This is the epitome of the opposite of controlled destruction. This is, we'll go boom now.
Yeah.
Volcano there, deal with it. I think one of our early alpha versions placed a volcano terrain piece.
Yeah.
which then did stuff because there's now a small volcano terrain piece there.
Yeah.
I think I suggested a couple of things that added terrain pieces. For some reason, everyone keeps shooting me down whenever I suggested one. I don't know why. I guess there's probably some kind of good reason not to have those.
I think it would have been great. That sounds like fun. But also maybe highly abusable.
I can't argue with that. Also, although we end up going with the one based off how Wrath of God works so that you could at least explain it to a person fairly simply.
Yeah.
It's Wrath of God, but if it hits you, dangerous terrain test.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually only 2 sentences worth of explaining.
And everybody gets it too.
And everybody gets it, and it worked fine during the playtest, and it worked fine during the review phases, and then literally right before release, it turned into chunk. Half a page of the book. Oh, right. Wordiness. Right. That's a thing. Oops.
Yeah. And it also had some.
I also don't think it added necessarily something that was good for the book to have. Because the 3 laws are already pretty good at blasting things. Like, it's not like the ability to kill things with magic damage was lacking in the book. And in particular, I just felt like the fact that it was so good at killing, like, I played against 1 4 members army, which had 3 gigantic dwarf clans blocks.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like your army. This spell is so ridiculous against it, I have to take it. I feel bad about this. I feel bad that I put something in the game, what was part of putting something in the game, that just makes that feel so bad because you're going to lose a significant percentage of multiple giant units.
Yeah, I guess that was a big.
And you can't even run away because you're dwarves.
A big part of the problem with it was the swinginess against big infantry units, which didn't really need to get pounded on. They were not the powerhouse of the game.
Yeah. So I actually like Wrath of God itself because it does quite high quality hits that are more easily absorbed by big units, which is relatively fair.
Yeah.
Because the units that are least able to run away are at least most able to survive, which is kind of balanced, as opposed to the units that are least able to run away get punished the hardest. Oh dear.
I think that's sort of really insightful, actually. Like, it worked. It sort of worked like Wrath of God, but it kind of was the opposite, or the yin to Wrath of God's yang, if you like. Yeah. And I think it was that was kind of problematic, right? I mean, flavor-wise, it was genius, but it, as you say, it was just kind of the wrong thing for the army and not quite the right thing for the game either. And I think it would have been really hard to come up with an implementation that delivered the volcano feel, but didn't have those downsides and wasn't just Wrath of God, right? And no one was going to be happy to have a second Wrath of God in, except for perhaps some power gamers.
I mean, you're right. Literally, we could write "See Wrath of God" in Arcane Compendium, and that would actually be a decent volcano spell because it's
flaming attack.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have access to thaumaturgy in any way, do they?
They do not.
Maybe they
do not have access to them.
That could be like a magical item, like a bounce spell of Wrath of God. Summon the volcano. That would be nice.
No. The official policy is that army books have access to their laws. These laws have been pre-assigned. If you want to move things around, you're going to have to negotiate.
It's not real access. It's just like a single little bounce spell.
I want to see how quickly the the ETC captains vote to remove the foul god from the game.
It's fine, right? You just throw, all your dice at it every turn, and it doesn't happen. They can't get higher than an 8, so you should be fine as long as you just make sure everything goes in.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. We sold it, the Infernal Dwarf book. Just give them Wrath of God in a bounce spell. It's perfect.
Anyway.
Moving on.
So that was the first one.
Yep.
Just to be clear, it wasn't that we weren't aware of those issues. It's that it was like, nah, give it a go. It'll be fine. And we didn't, and because of some of the hinkiness in playtests, we didn't really get much pushback on it. We didn't get much pushback on anything with the book, which I did not think was helpful. So a lot of things that we put out there on the expectation that if they were a problem, they'd get cut, didn't get cut because nothing was a problem. Which, yeah, it's sort of like reaching for a staircase railing that you thought would be there, and then discovering that you're now falling off a staircase. Anyway, we picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off, and the second one was, the way I remember it is, the key fundamental was, this is the Infernal Dwarf hereditary spell. Demon Legions has a spell that pretty much only Demon Legions could have, because they are the army that can have 7 different copies of this and actually cast them all in one magic phase.
Yep.
I wish I was exaggerating. That was a very, very painful game.
Yeah.
Seriously, that. Okay, I guess I stopped some number of these, and the rest of them are just going to suck. Okay. Anyway, and it's like, so, and it was like, I felt like that was a good example of what a hereditary spell should be. Like the one to take inspiration from. The one that says only this army could have that. No other army could have the Infernal hereditary spell. It wouldn't even make sense for them.
Yeah.
And that's why we got to the one based around incendiary tokens.
Yeah.
They're unique to the army. It would be literally useless in any other book. But here, it does a thing, and it does a thing that is useful that none of the other spells available to the book actually do. And because we've flavored all the incendiary tokens as oil, I felt like essentially you're casting the D&D grease spell on them. They're slipping, they're sliding, and they're falling over because the oil just got extra slippery. And it made kind of flavor sense as the kind of thing you do if you kind of, it's a thing you develop if routinely you are dousing your enemies in oil prior to setting them on fire anyway. You might as well figure out ways to kind of double down on that.
Yeah.
I guess the problem with it was that it was not very strong. RT decided, we proposed it. RT priced it at 4+, 6+. This was the first inkling that we had made a mistake. I thought it was stronger than that, but I was wrong and they were right, and that was a problem. Because to go back to the Tablet of Asherak, you know what it feels like being an Infernal Dwarf wizard? Throwing 3 or 4 dice at a spell and cackling maniacally.
And this spell you needed 2 dice for at most.
On a spell that you need 2 dice for,
yeah,
you don't cackle maniacally, you just kind of feel stupid. You go, but all right. Oh hum. Very sad. So yeah, it was just, we liked the design. We salvaged the design. We kept most of it. We just stapled back on more power because ultimately, more power.
So the first version of this, it gave an incendiary token and what else?
No, the first version debuffed them based on tokens.
Okay, yeah, that's
and was too weak. And then we're like, all right, we need to turn this up a notch. We need a bigger spell because this is just too weak. It feels too weak, and there are many armies where that a lot that like Demon Legion's loves their cheap spammable spell. It's fine. It fits there, but this is the wrong army for that.
Yeah.
We looked at a lot of things. We looked at going back to older designs, newer designs, a bunch of things, but ultimately it's like maybe we should use things. Maybe maybe when you're having trouble, you should look to see what's already worked before. And like the original Slim Book one, worked. People liked it. And people liked it so much that we built the entire Incendiary mechanic based on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So as I roughly put it in the update, if you don't actually read that, like the flavor burst works, we put Curse of Nizhikh and Haze of Magnesia in a room, played some romantic music, and a little bit later, out popped the new hereditary spell. Well, I thought it was hilarious, and I'm glad that at least one person found it funny. Because, yeah. And it makes sense. This way, the spell fuels itself. It's not just doing nothing. And you can actually, the thing I quite like you can do with it is you can cast it. And then next turn you can cast it again, and now it's stronger because you cast it the last turn on them. Like in and of itself, it's a debuff that gets stronger the more you use it on the target, which makes it stronger in extended combats, which is the kind of grinding combat that in theory you'd like to have going on with dwarves. But it also interacts with a whole bunch of other stuff in the army.
Yeah. And you can cast it on a unit, and then in the shooting phase, put a lot of more incendiary tokens on that unit, so it can get more powerful in the same turn even.
Yep. Or you can or you can preemptively oil them up so that they're like, okay, if that thing gets into combat, they're going to be debuffed to heck and back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this last design is really successful in that, actually.
Yeah. Oh, and the latest redesign of it is just because the previous wording didn't actually work the way it looked like it should. Because apparently, technically, the token got removed at the end of the next turn. Oops. We didn't realize that. I actually didn't realize that was a problem. Crap. So we fixed the wording.
Yep.
We're happy with the design. It might change if there's a problem, but I said it about literally everything in the book.
I mean, there's been good feedback on this latest version, right? And in particular, I think there are some people who appreciate that it's a quote-unquote dwarf way to add tokens rather than a vassal way to add tokens. So I think it's done a lot of good in a lot of ways, actually. I mean, I'll be honest, I was never a big fan of Haze of Magnesia, and I was not a big fan of the Hereditary in any version of the LAB up until this one. And this spell, I think, is really interesting, and I really like it.
Thanks, Dan.
Nice.
I
can't
tell you for the life of me which players it works for, though. It's another one that
I we need to go, good. We needed to get back to that discussion as well. But yeah, I mean it's Johnny in that it combos with the rest of the army so well. I think, but yeah. I don't think it appeals to anyone that particularly. It's an extension of the army in a way. So
I think that there's a slight leaning towards spike for buff spell buff/debuff spells, and towards Timmy for damage spells. So in that sense, it's a spikier spell than most, but that's just a kind of general game-wide trend for
yeah, that's true.
For the spells that tip the scales as opposed to the spells that just do their thing.
Yeah, I mean, Wrath of God is a Timmy spell for sure.
Oh yeah,
and the first Hereditary was very much in that vein, right?
Yeah, but
which is what they're asking for, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think for me, I think for me, the Timmy aspect of the spell is just the fact that you can make something farmable, right? The Timmy aspect of the spell is the same as what Haze of Magnesia had, which is you put a flamethrower in your army and you wait for the enemy to get in range, and then you cast the spell on them and you rub your hands together and you barbecue their unit.
Yeah, and you watch the world burn. So
some players just want to watch the opponent's units burn.
Yeah, it ties into that whole aspect of the army, which can appeal to Timmy for sure. So yeah, that's good. Okay, I have checked off everything I had on my list. Do you have any more units that you want to bring up, or designs that you want to bring up? Maybe the Lamasu with the riddle and all of that. And I yeah, now that I think about it, we should also mention the Disciples of Lugar with their interesting design.
Do we have to?
I think we do.
All right.
So let's start with the Lamasu. This one I read through the book, and I think it has a neat Timmy aspect in it that appeals to the social gamer specifically, in that you have to interact with your opponent with it. You have to say, this is my model, you get to decide parts of its rules. So you have to interact with your opponent with it. More than like normal units. So I think that's a neat little detail on it.
Fair enough. So mechanically, this is one of those other cases where I stole something from Magic because I attribute my sources, damn it. Which is the punish mechanics, which nobody cares, but like the first one came out something like 2003, so this is a very old thing for Magic, but kind of new for any part of Whamme I'm familiar with, which isn't a lot, so that's not much of a climb. Which is the idea of you get stronger effects, but because your opponent chooses what you get, it's not that strong.
Yeah. They get to pick their poison as it happens.
Yeah, and like a lot of the early Magic ones were quite bad because it was a case of you always do this one unless it would literally lose you the game to do that, and then you do the other thing, which tended to result in them not doing very much because.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm now on 15 out of 20 life, and you've got nothing left to do for the rest of the game. Fantastic. I guess I'm going to win this one. So, but the thing is, they do also make for this quite fun decision point. And when it is actually a tough decision, and we tried to make it a pretty tough decision, I think we succeeded.
Yeah.
It can also be an appealing nuts and bolts kind of decision to make, because you actually have to sit, think, evaluate possibly quite a lot of variables, and then make a decision that actually wasn't that big, but that 1% or that half of a percent, could be this game.
Yeah, but that appeals to the spike in the opponent, not in yourself.
Oh yeah, but the thing is, games involve 2 players.
Yeah, of course. So it can still like make people happy for sure, and let them have fun. So what I really find interesting in this is that I can't really say what I would pick if I faced this. So I think you did a good job on balancing it. But maybe Dan has some more insight on that.
I have a really similar view to you, actually. In fact, this has been one of my favorite moments on the forum of the last probably couple of months. Is there was a thread where basically some people were absolutely adamant that the channel was the right pick, and there were other people who were absolutely adamant that the spell was the right pick. And one of the new staff members who's now on the ID team, a guy I know quite well called Mike, he just waded into that thread and went, right, so you're convinced it's this one and you're convinced it's this one. So the team got that right then.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't even care if it gets taken out of the book. That moment was worth having it in the book for me. I thought it was hilarious, and yeah, I'm with you. And to be honest, Glenn was saying it. I could see myself right at the start of a game, paper and like the nuts and bolts thing. To be honest, that's actually on some level what I don't like about it, right? Because if I'm going to be mildly critical, if I'm going to do that, I want it to be because I've chosen to, and it would really frustrate me if my opponent put it on the table, but I wasn't in the mood for that level of thinking, because I'm not sure I could not do it. And I'd be sat there like with pen and paper hating myself, working out which was the 1% bonus.
I wonder though if it's an anti nuts and bolt pick, also because you don't want to put that power into your opponent's hands. You can't.
Oh sure.
You can't plan your magic phase like way in advance and as detailed, because you have to take into account.
Oh totally. That's actually what kind of makes it more Timmy-ish, because it's just like YOLO.
Yeah.
Let's take it and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
There's no point being uptight about this. I can't choose what it's going to do, so let's roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
I also go ahead.
Yeah, so it just kind of inverts it for the way a lot of things work, which I think is nice as just kind of change.
Yeah, that was like the problem with the initial designs. I liked the initial designs of it with this complex magic casting. I thought that really captured the feel of the mystery of the riddle. But it turned out to be too complex, I think, with too many weird things happening and stuff like that. But this still captures some of that I think, while being a lot simpler. So I think that's nice.
Yeah. The important thing to do when you have a design that's not working is work out what the good part was.
Yeah.
And then cut away everything else and see what you can do with it. And here it was, the binary choice mini game. That was fun. What wasn't working about it was doing it every turn and having the parameters constantly change. And okay, how about we just do this once? Once is fine. It's not like you ask. It's not like the Sphinx is famous for asking the same guy 6 riddles in a row, right? Yeah, she asked one riddle. And then either ate them or got her head chopped off. One riddle.
Yep.
And yeah.
I don't know how this relates to the profiles, but I think the current design has a really natural synergy with one of the items. Hold on, let me just check. I'm not about to say something really daft. But which is there's the breath of the brass bull, which gives the model a health point and a breath weapon. And it's quite a natural thing in some ways for breath weapons to be associated with flyers and wizards, and I think that I don't know whether it's probably too obvious to be really a Johnny thing in terms of being creative, but I've seen a lot of people just excited about just putting that item on that model because they feel that the combination is just really interesting in the game.
Oh, one important thing to know about designing for Johnny is that they need to feel clever. They don't necessarily need to be clever. That's
a good distinction.
Which is a horrible, mean thing to say, but like, it's true. Like, when professional game designers are doing it, they will put things in so that people who are going to one day going to be really clever and good at figuring these things out get baby's first experience of feeling clever. So it's important to have, and I'm not saying that this was the case here. Just like you said, maybe it's too obvious to be Johnny. And it's like, no, there's no such thing as too obvious to be Johnny, because everyone starts somewhere, and a Johnny player is a Johnny player in their first game. And if they can feel like they did something clever the first time they sit down with the book and make a list, they'll be happy. And you need something for that guy as well as the guy who's been doing this for 15 years, knows the entire thing backwards, and still is trying to do something clever.
That's really insightful. Thanks. No, I've not thought of like that way. That's really interesting.
Indeed, that's that's a great point.
Yeah, I pulled it off. That was what I kind of worked out for myself when they pointed out that they deliberately seed Johnny strategies into sets. Like, they put it there for you to find.
Yeah.
And then you find it. Good for you. But then they also put stuff in there that they didn't realize was in there, and people found that too. And that's the real game that you're hunting. The thing that they screwed up.
Yeah, like finding the holes in every new balance pack.
But yeah, it's like you need both, because people are at different levels and everyone needs something for them.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's neat.
For the record, we didn't deliberately seed it there as a Breath of the Brass Ball thing. It was, so this is a wizard. Maybe let it take, wizard magic items.
Yep.
Breath of the Brass Ball. Sure, I guess it can do that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
That's probably the best thing to do with it. Oh well. Have fun. Enjoy. It's a cool item. It's a cool unit. I don't mind this being what it's good at.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be other combos that.
So who feels that I was saying to them specifically? No, we didn't actually put that there for you to find. You were clever. No, but seriously, that is actually the case. That wasn't what it was there for, but it's like, sure, cool. Someone figured that out, and that seems fine and doesn't seem broken. Enjoy. We were too busy, arguing about how to make the main ability work. We didn't have time to spend millions of hours on the extra bit we threw in for fun.
Yep.
Didn't quite throw in for fun, but it was there like, they need a bit more because we're moving into characters and it's a little underwhelming otherwise. It's not, I mean, the final package it's a wizard on a manticore thing. Like, it's not broken, but it's a bit different, and that's I like that. I like it.
Yeah,
it's one thing I like out of the book.
If I were to play Infernal Dwarves, I would definitely have a Lamassu. That's for sure. I like that model. Okay, so the Disciples of Lugar. They have been through some changes. Early on, they had like a mechanic that they could turn on and like switch out their entire profile more or less to become.
They still have a mechanic that does that. It
doesn't do as much. I think. Like they previously they gained the Feign Flight. Was it they lost Feign Flight perhaps?
They gained Fearless, thus making Feign Flight pointless.
Yeah.
Technically, they still have Feign Flight, but they can't flee. So,
yeah.
It becomes one of the less useful special rules to have.
Yeah, and now they only have Feign Flight if they are litigators. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the controversial rule here is, of course, the what's it called? The opponent
opposition research.
Opposition research. I love that name. Which I would say is kind of a griefer appeal in that if you take it, and you come up against someone who relies on scout on some unit, you can say nope, you're not. You can't have your fun. That thing can't scout, which I think is part of why it's been not super well received. I think.
The irony is, of course, it wasn't put. We didn't include it to host scout. If we'd been looking for a mechanic to host scout, we would have done something completely different.
Yeah, I understand that, and
I understand that it kind of does. It's just that, oops, that was the design process was, hey, how about the item that the Warriors of the Dark Gods used to have? Let's go with that.
The foreboding.
Yeah, let's do that. And we like voted yes, we'll do that one. That one fits. And then after we agreed, we hunted down the actual wording and we used it.
Yep.
Which included the line about scouting, which would completely forgotten existed as far as I recall.
Yeah, but I think it's, in a way, it needs to be there as well, because if it's not, there's a 50-50 chance that the item does nothing. Pretty much. Not always, of course, but if you force someone to deploy a unit and then they win the roll off and they decide to drop everything, and they would have decided that anyway, then it did nothing.
And there are certainly, I think, it's one of these things that varies between kind of communities and metas, but there are metas where that if you don't drop your army, you're weird.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, alternating is tough.
I usually alternate a few times and then figure I don't want to bother with having to think with every drop. I can just drop everything and then think all at the same time, not have to worry about where the future units are gonna be. So that's usually my approach. And I love it when the opponent drops first, because then I can do the same thing, but I didn't have to make the choice. So that's me.
No, totally. That's pretty similar to was. But like in other games, like one of the things that I personally found hardest to develop skill at was deploying flexibly so that you could change your plans as you were going. And you had to alternate. Because the rule was just you go, I go, you go, I go, you go, I go, all the way to the end. And this led to me playing things like armies with 1 million units of chaff. So I just spent the entire time putting down nothing nowhere. And even then, I would usually end up going, I really wish I hadn't put my nothing precisely there.
Yeah, you need to put it half an inch to the left, and then you could have fit your nice unit there. That's what I want to avoid when I put everything down at once.
And it's a very hard skill to develop. It absolutely decides the fate of your entire game.
Yep.
And you have to do it first.
I back to opposition research. I wonder if there's some way to remove the griefing aspect of it with denying scouts, and still make it always useful, so to speak.
I'm going to say yes. And now that we got that feedback on it, I think it's pretty good that something will be done about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not possible that we'll just decide that we find something better than new, but I think there's ways to fix it.
Yeah, definitely.
Particularly if so the problem is that it makes Scout and Vanguard units feel bad. That's bad. Just cut that. And needs to do something if your opponent was going to drop for first anyway.
Yeah.
These are not impossible design parameters. You can
absolutely
you can easily fill that with 1 million different designs, and I'm sure we'll find something.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm about 90% sure we'll find something. If we try. Again, maybe we'll just you know what? We'll do this instead. Who knows?
Yeah.
So we're not sure what we'll do yet. Anyway,
yeah,
we're still talking about them.
Yeah. And I think
think
it's
one
one
of
of
the
those
things-
rules that needs a bit more data, perhaps, before you make changes to it. It has to settle a bit.
Also that. Dan?
I was just going to say, I think that this is really hard, right? Like, because, hopefully, I'm not about to say something I shouldn't, but these guys are basically lawyers, right, on some level, and
Yep.
you know, there's some really cool ideas and stuff related to that in the background, which I think is really cool. But equally, I think it's something that's very hard to manifest well on the table, right? This is, you know, to write a design in a battle game that someone reads and goes, "Oh, they're lawyers." That's bloody hard, right? Like I think, you know, and actually I think, you know, I think some of the different things the team has tried so far are a really good effort, right? And partly I'm saying this because, you know, I did a thing over the summer where I was sort of playing with how would I tweak the book. And this is one of the units I found really difficult because I wanted to capture that lawyer bit. And it's bloody hard.
Yep.
I'm arguing. I too spent a summer trying to capture that and found it bloody hard. Actually, currently it's for me it's summer and I'm finding it hard. So you know what? 2 summers now. 2 summers. It's been
But I do think that the opposition research does capture it somewhat, at least. It feels.
Oh yeah, no, I like it. It's not a perfect rule, but I am very happy with it as a background team. As the background team rep, I'm very happy with it. As a member of the team in general, it's not perfect.
Yep.
I also think that the move from raw stats to lesser stats but kind of lethal strike and distracting and stuff. Like I know there are arguments about has it got too many rules and blah blah blah, but I think that part of the concept where, you know, it's a lawyer, so they don't have raw stats, but what they have is they're a bit tricksy. I think for me that helps pull out the lawyer aspect. Maybe it can be implemented differently, I don't know, but I think there is something in that, right? It's not a total, you know.
Oh no, it wasn't a terrible idea. It's very clever, and the team member who thought of it, which by the way was not me. I feel it's important to point out I'm not the only person doing things here. I just like going, yes, that was my idea, and I remember it because it was cool, but that was someone else's idea, and it was very clever. I greatly respect that. They came up with a very clever idea there, and again, possibly not perfectly implemented the first time around, but this is why it's an iterative process. We get another go.
I think one of the things that possibly contributed to the reception to this, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think it relates to the profiles, is there's a combo here, right? Which is the opposition research arrogance, particularly in its original incarnation. There's sort of a combo here, right? Which, you know, maybe this is a Johnny thing, in that you go, okay, right, well, I've got this thing that makes you charge me, but it's on an infantry model.
Yeah.
But I've got this other thing that I can put your unit, right? And I can go, right, so I take these 2 things and I put your unit there and I put my army opposite it and I go for it. So I mean, I think it's an interesting thing, you know, perhaps for a Johnny type player, that there's a combo, there's a way to, you know, it's sort of a theme, but it's also, you know, a combo and an idea. But maybe that didn't help the reception of this, and maybe if arrogance hadn't existed or been different, it would have been received better.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way of putting it, because you're viewing Johnny Appeal as a negative, and you may well be right. But I wouldn't have thought of that. I'd have thought of Johnny Appeal as, you know, a good thing, a thing that means that at least some players will like it, and hopefully other players will like it for other reasons as well. But you're saying that if it's too clearly for one type of player, then other types of player will feel left out?
No, sorry, I put that badly. All I meant was that it kind of, that combo reinforces the griefer thing.
I think it's a combination of the griefer and Timmy, and Johnny, because like on its own none of these are super big issues, but when you can combine them, which a Johnny will do, then you can get some pretty bad play experience, maybe, where like you're not playing the game, the opponent is playing the game for you, and maybe the Johnny player will do it because it's a cool combo, but then it still results in bad play experience. While the griefer maybe doesn't even realize it.
No, the griefer realizes it and is like, my time has come.
The stars aligned. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, a griefer can still be a part of Johnny. So.
Yeah, everything has overlap.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, no, that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't meant to be a criticism per se. I only mentioned it because I felt it tied to the profiles, right? In the you know, and there was no Johnny combo, so to speak, for the item really when it was in the Warriors book, other than the combo with the whole army, which is you've got a combat army.
Yeah.
I need to smash you in combat, therefore I need to know where you are. There you are.
Yeah.
Legit.
Yeah, one thing
it is very different in the context of an army with shooting, so.
Yeah. One thing that I really like about the design is that I always loved that Orb of Foreboding. I thought it was a really cool item, and I thought it was a shame that like nobody used it. And now it's back in a different form, so maybe it can say that in some way. I would like that.
Noted. I will try and remember that. I can promise nothing because everyone gets a say.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, in the UK, it was a standing joke towards the end of 20. Anyway, that people doing podcasts somehow got preferred favor or something with with games companies, and it was a bit of a standing joke in the community. So there you go. It's going to be the first 9th page scandal, right?
Yeah.
It's not because he's a bit of doing a podcast, it's because he's one of our artists.
Yeah, nothing inferior here for sure. Okay. Is that everything that we want to touch on this book?
So I've had another weird Dan question about the profiles generally, but it's nothing to do with ID.
Shoot.
All good.
So a couple of times while we've been doing this, we've told stories about things that have happened in games. And for me, that's one of the things that I love about wargaming, right? I love some of the stories that happen, and you go to it's one of the best bits of a tournament for me. I mean,
yeah.
I don't like competitive environments; they don't suit me. But I love going to the pub afterwards and like, did you hear what happened to Dave, right,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And I just wondered, how does that fit into the profiles? That joy of the stories and that aspect, is that the social
Timmy.
gamer?
Yeah, Timmy and the social gamer.
Like a Timmy tournament is that guy. A Spiker tournament is the guy sitting in the corner between rounds, sipping like
energy drinks,
water or Gatorade or something, or energy drinks if it's getting later, thinking about their next round.
And reading the list that he might come up against, and looking at the number, like who am I likely to play against, and all of that.
Interesting.
So,
I mean,
which to be fair is often me because I'm not the always. I like the stories, but I just have people in it.
So the last tournament I actually played before I sort of retired was in 2019, and it was with the old ID book actually. And I have this. There was a move I pulled in one of the games that I was astonishingly proud of. And literally, like 7 o'clock that night, we're in the pub having dinner, and I'm recreating this tabletop situation with like the salt, the pepper, and napkin. And it's the thing I remember from that tournament more than any of the games.
Yeah.
Was that story and telling that story in the group of people that were around and the laugh we were having about it. It's, I love those. I heard a story about arrogance recently, right? So someone was using an arrogance list and they played against someone with a dragon. So they pushed up. Dragon in range of the arrogance. Dragon fails its arrogance test. Declares charge on the Overlord's unit. Overlord's unit fails terror. Not in range. Overlord's unit runs 3 inches. Dragon stomps on them all. There you go. Arrogance is totally broken.
Oh wow, that's the perfect perfect result of that rule.
Well, I guess serves them right.
And
That's why we roll dice.
Yeah, and the rule's called arrogance, and they didn't have their BSB in range. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. There was a reason that the name arrogance was chosen for it. It's all about biting off possibly more than you can chew.
All right. Yeah, you made me really miss tournaments now. Damn, it's been too long. Hopefully we can get back to it soon. Because man, those stories like that are one of the absolute best parts of tournaments for sure.
I will try and stay quiet and not look too smug.
For those not getting the joke, he's from New Zealand, so that's the joke here. Okay.
Although I actually ended up missing the second half of the last one to illness, so that was sad. But it was still good to get back out and yeah.
Okay. Any more last thoughts? No.
I think we covered all the bullet points for the changes.
Yeah, I think so too. And we've gone through a lot of the interesting units in the game. We haven't talked much about like the core stuff, like the Citadel Guard, but don't know if those appeal to anyone in particular. So maybe leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't think there's just really deep insights to be held into the basic building blocks.
Yeah.
You designed the complex stuff for Psychographics. You designed the building block things to make everything else have a foundation to exist within.
Yeah.
Like Timmy can't have the big splashy thing if there isn't a ordinary baseline for it to be splashy compared to.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's wrap this up. How has your painting been going, Glenn?
I have added a fairly early layer of paint to a bunch of miniatures, which it's making me feel a lot better about them than when they were just a whole bunch of base coated things that had been sitting right there for years, which is impressive since I think we only moved into this house 3 years ago. I'm pretty sure that they were just sitting there for 2 of them. So I'm happy that there's been movement made on them, and thank you for motivating me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll even keep going with these little guys because they look. It's amazing how much just the first layer of paint makes us a difference.
Yeah, like putting down the base coats, it becomes a whole different thing for sure. But
I don't know. I've played a ton of miniatures, but every time it just kind of surprises me to just kind of see the little details that they put in there that you didn't really think about.
Yeah.
Until there it is. Hey, that's cool.
No, that's
got a bell.
Yeah. And now you reminded me of the all of the hourglasses that are on these stupid miniatures. Though I hate painting hourglasses. That's the worst detail because it requires so many different colors.
An hourglass.
Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah. No. I don't blame you. But on the other hand, it's kind of neat the first time you notice that there's an hourglass there.
Yeah, but the Games Workshop Empire stuff is so many hourglasses. I hate it. But whatever. I love hearing that you gotten work done, and that I help motivate you. That's part of the goal with this whole thing. So hopefully we've used some peer pressure to get Dan start painting again as well. So next time you're on the show, you'll be working on something, I hope. For myself, I've made some progress on the horses. I have 5 of them here, so I've been working on the leather and the packs, all of the details that they're carrying around. They have a lot of details, these guys. Kind of regret putting it all on there, but I think it looks good in the end. So just that. They take a lot of time, but they're getting there. So happy with that. Okay, I think that's everything. So thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been a great show. I really enjoyed chatting about all the Infernal Dwarves and revisiting this topic as well.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, ditto. I really enjoyed it.
Yep.
It was really fun.
Excellent.
And seriously, hang on to the end. Keep watching for further announcements.
Yep. We're all excited for what's to come. I mean, the Ninth Age has done quite a lot of that, releasing like a surprise thing for Christmas, and that's I love that. So we're looking forward to that. And to those still watching, as you said, thank you for watching, getting it through all this way. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, would love to know what you've been painting. I should always mention that at the beginning of the show, so that I can catch people out, not only those few that listen to the end, but let us know, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. Cheers.